all you Philly fans, I'm Jackie. Welcome back to my kitchen as we continue with the Real Women of Philadelphia cooking competition. Today I'm going to show you how we can take a simple, inexpensive cut of meat and by adding some Philly and fresh ingredients, turn it into a great dish worthy of a special occasion. I like to call this dish Celebrate Spring Stuffed Pork. We take a center cut pork loin, roll it up with some Philadelphia cream cheese, spring onions, and asparagus. We brush it all with a maple-dijon glaze and roast it in the oven, mostly hands off until done, and it's even going to create its own creamy sauce while it cooks. Before we get to the pork, we'll get all of our filling ingredients prepared. So let's start with the asparagus, my favorite spring vegetable. I'm using it here today to do double duty. It's going to add that flavor, which I love, but also a beautiful shot of color. It's going to add visual appeal. So to get the best color out of our asparagus, there are three things we do. We peel the stalk, and I do that just with my vegetable peeler, running it a couple times down the stalk. It doesn't have to be perfect. And if you don't peel your asparagus, it'll still taste great, but the color will be more of a deep olive green and not the punchy, vibrant green that we're going for here. So peel the asparagus and then we blanch it. That just means to boil it in a big pot of salted water, and not for too long, just until tender. And we take it straight from the pot and plunge it into an ice bath. And an ice bath is just a big bowl filled with water and ice, and that will stop the cooking so it doesn't get mushy, but it'll also set the color. So I've got my pot of water on, let's do that now. And for the rest of our filling, well, that's super easy because that's Philly. In my bowl I have 8 ounces or 1 block of Philadelphia cream cheese, regular original. To that I've added a couple spring onions, which I sliced and I just sauteed briefly in a bit of olive oil just to soften them and mellow out the flavor a bit. I've also included a bunch of chopped fresh chives, a bit of salt and pepper, and a couple teaspoons of our glaze, which I'll get to in a minute. And that is just as simple as stirring it up with a wooden spoon. If your Philly is already at room temperature, it makes it even easier, but those warm spring onions and that little bit of olive oil makes it easy. Okay, that's done. I mentioned our glaze. Well, that's just easy. That's equal parts Dijon mustard and maple syrup just stirred together. Now it's time to prepare our pork. And this is a step that could be a little challenging, but don't be intimidated. Cooking is an art, not a science, as they say, and furthermore, it's an art that you eat. This is not going to hang on your wall for years to come, so if it's not perfect, don't sweat it. Just grab a knife, a good sharp knife, and dive in. I have the short end facing me, and I've got a sharp chef's knife holding it horizontally, and I'm going to cut into the pork loin at the halfway point and just slice, slice, slice halfway through the depth. Can take a peek, look inside, but not all the way through. Oh, gonna leave it attached maybe anywhere from a ½ inch to an inch, and then fold it open like a book. This is called butterflying, and it's probably not too new to you. And this has made our pork rolly part thinner and wider, which is what we're looking for, but we want to take it even further. So now we're going to do the same butterflying move a second time. We're going to start at the center, kind of the inner spine of this book we just created. And again, with my knife horizontal, I'm going to slice into the meat and work my way across horizontally, but again, not all the way through. Almost like I'm making a pamphlet instead of a book. Okay, and fold that open. Super. And now we'll do it with the other side as well. Feel free to reposition yourself as you need to. And if you accidentally put a hole through your pork where you don't mean to, don't worry about it. My cooking is as perfect as I am, and that gives me a lot of wiggle room, let me tell you. All right. So once we've got that done, kind of push out any uneven parts, but we're gonna flatten this out even better. Going to lay a piece of plastic wrap over top, and I've got my trusty mallet, but you can use a rolling pin or a heavy base saucepan, and the plastic wrap's just going to keep things tidy, and then I'm going to pound it into a nice even thickness and thin it out a little more. And now it's a simple case of filling it and rolling it. Before you begin, have 3 pieces of string ready because we're going to tie this baby up when we're done. And a little salt and pepper on the pork for seasoning at this point. And then on goes our filling. And I am spreading the filling all the way to the edge closest to me. I've got the short edge close to me, but I'm leaving a border around the sides and the far end so that we don't lose too much filling squeezing out while it cooks. There we go. Then we just add our asparagus. Doesn't really matter which way they're facing because they're going to be all rolled up. And again, they're not going all the way to the end because as we roll this, they'll kind of get smushed along anyway. So starting with the short end close to you, just roll like a jelly roll. If you've ever made a jelly roll, this will feel comfortable and at home. Nice and snug and all the way to the end. Gorgeous, look at that. Get my handy dandy strings that I pre-cut, have them all ready. Believe me, I learned that the hard way. Now that our roast is ready, it goes into a pan, a baking dish, just, a little bit bigger than the roast, not too big. We don't want it to dry out around there. I've lightly sprayed this with oil. In goes the roast. I'm also pouring half a cup or so of chicken broth in with the roast so it doesn't burn. And depending on your size of pan, it could be more or less. You just want to coat the bottom. And then lastly, we've got our glaze. That's the Dijon and the maple syrup that we mixed up earlier, that we added a little bit of this to our filling. So those flavors are going to echo throughout and carry through. I'll brush about half of the glaze on now. And then halfway through the roasting time, I'll take the roast out, I'll check, make sure that there's still chicken broth, that it hasn't dried out, and I'll spread the rest of the glaze on then. And the sweetness from the maple syrup is going to help this get a nice pretty crust happening. So this is going into a preheated oven, 425 degrees. Alright, our roast is cooked. Instant read thermometer inserted into the meat tells me it's 145 degrees and it's browned up beautifully. Now we can't slice this right away. It needs to rest first for about 10 minutes, lightly loosely tinted with foil to keep it warm. And in the meantime, we're going to take these wonderful pan juices and broth and make a quick, easy, creamy sauce to serve alongside. I'm just going to pour the broth and cooking juices into a saucepan, strain them through a metal strainer. Alright, so I've brought it up to a boil. I'm just going to turn the heat off and slowly whisk in some of our leftover filling. Our pork roll has rested and it's sliced up beautifully using a thin serrated knife. I'm serving it on a puddle of our easy creamy pan sauce. And the reason I'm doing this instead of drizzling the sauce over top is because I don't want to cover up this beautiful creamy green swirl. I want that to be center stage. It's simply garnished with some sliced greens from our spring onions and some fresh chives. This would be delicious served with that creamy leek and potato tart we made last week. Or you could keep it really simple and just toss some sweet potato wedges with olive oil and seasoning and bake it off in the oven while your pork cooks. Add a warm or fresh spinach salad in a maple dressing perhaps, and you've got a fabulous spring meal worthy of a celebration. I hope you enjoy this dish and I look forward to seeing you again. Until then, have a great day and a happy spring.